When some people play VR, they get what is called motion sickness, which is caused typically by artificially moving in a virtual space while standing still in the real world. Similar to something like seasickness, which you've probably heard of. Many people take the wrong approach when dealing with VR sickness, and I'd like to offer a few strategies and tips on how to alleviate this problem as best you can. These tips are for people either new to VR or just never beat their sickness before. If you don't get motion sick in VR, these tips probably won't help you. First and foremost, you want to make sure you're getting solid frame rates in the games you're playing. 90 FPS or more is what I recommend. You want the game to run as smooth as possible so you eliminate the FPS drops as a possible cause of the sickness. So make sure your games are running well and at a solid frame rate. Do not brute force your way through it. This is the most common mistake a lot of people make. Your goal is not to build any sort of immunity. It's more about training your brain to better understand and react to the never-before-felt artificial movements of virtual reality. You want your brain to get used to not being sick in VR, and overdosing out the gate is probably not a good idea. I get it, VR is really fun, it's probably hard to take your headset off the first few days, but you really can get sick from it, so it's best to take this approach very slowly. Which brings us to our next tip. You really need to take things slow. The moment you start feeling weird, which could be 10 minutes, it could be an hour. That's up to you to figure out. But you need to stop playing, take the headset off, and let your brain rest for a little bit. Once you're back to 100%, which could take 5 minutes, it could take an hour, it's different for every person. Again, you need to figure that out yourself. But once you're back to 100%, you can go back into VR and rinse-repeat this process. If you feel weird, immediately stop and rest, wait until you're better, and then put the headset back on. What you'll find is that you can stay in VR longer and longer the more often and consistent that you play. Start with some easy games and work your way up. You don't want to jump into something like Sorrento or Pavlov right away. Start with stationary games like Beat Saber or 11 table tennis. Something that gets you moving in VR, but not artificially. You just want to get used to the feel of virtual reality because it really does trick your brain. Once you're comfortable in stationary games, start to introduce the teleport and snap turning mechanics. Games like Half-Life Alyx, Red Matter 2, VR Chat, Walkabout Mini Golf. All these games offer a magnitude of locomotion options that can be very friendly for newer users. Experiment, but don't go too far. Again, you want to take this process slowly and make sure your brain eases into these things. Once these games feel good to you, we can start getting into the more advanced types of movement. Games like Contractors or Pavlov, even Sorrento would be a good place to start. If you can get to this point and manage to hold your own, you're in a good spot, because most of the VR games you play are going to be using these types of locomotion. And that's it for my tips right now. Like I said, you want to take it very slow, you want to train your brain, get yourself used to not being sick in VR. Don't overdose yourself, don't brute force your way through it, it's just the bad approach, and I've heard very bad stories about people doing that. And yeah, if you like the video, like and subscribe. Thank you. Hopefully this helps some people. Bye-bye.